Hey y'all, so today I'm finally going to be doing a wrap up for books 1 through 6 of this year, as well as a couple books that I read at the end of 2016. Some of you might be aware that at the end of 2016 and the beginning of 2017, I hit a major reading slump, and until mid-March, I'd only read one book this year. And then in March and in April, I finally started getting back into the swing of reading, and so now I finally have books to wrap up, and a couple books from the end of 2016 that I didn't get a chance to wrap up when I did my last 2016 wrap up. So in total, I'm going to be wrapping up 8 books, but only 6 of them are ones that I've read in 2017. Like I've said in other videos, I'm not doing my wrap ups by month, especially since I haven't been reading for several of those months, but I'm doing them by numbers of books. However, I'm currently doing a 30-day reading challenge, which you can keep up with on my Twitter, and I will be probably doing some sort of wrap up at the end of May for my 30-day reading challenge, but otherwise it's not going to be any sort of monthly wrap-ups. Okay, so now that I have all that random junk out of the way, let's jump into the wrap-up. So the first of the books from the end of 2016 is The Boys Next Door by Jennifer Eccles, which was a reread for me. This was at least my 3rd read of the book, perhaps 4th or 5th, I'm not entirely sure. This is a cute contemporary novel that takes place over the summer at a lake, and it centers around our main character Lori and the 2 boys that live next door who are named Adam and Sean. I first picked this up in junior high, I think, and ever since then it's been one of those quick, fun reads that's always really entertaining and really cute and a really light read. It doesn't really ever delve into any serious topics, it just stays in this really cute, light, silly realm with some really ridiculous situations, like there's a fake dating scenario that goes on in here. It's just a really fun read that's really cute and silly. Like I mentioned, it can borderline ridiculous sometimes with some of the stuff that happens, but overall it's one that I come back to and love every single time. I think I gave this like 4 out of 5 stars in this read through, somewhere around the 8.5 star rating. It's not an all-time favorite, but it's one that's always really fun to sit down and read over and over. And then the last book from 2016 is Obsidian by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is the first book in the Lux series, and obviously this is the bind-up of the first 2 books, Obsidian and Onyx. So far, Obsidian is still the only book I've read in this series, but it's definitely a series I do want to continue sometime in the future. So Obsidian centers around our main character, Katie, who has just moved to a small town. She's really not excited about moving to this small town until she sees her next door neighbor Damon, and things start looking up. And then he opens his mouth and she realizes that he's a total jerk. And then it gets even weirder when strange things start happening around town and she realizes that Damon may have some special powers that are otherworldly, one might say. This is my 2nd Jennifer L. Armentrout book. I loved Don't Look Back last year, and when I read this in December, once again, I got engrossed in this book. She is so good at writing addicting books that you do not want to put down. There's a reviewer on Goodreads that I follow named Steph who reviewed this book and essentially said every single thing that I could have thought to say and said it extremely well. So I'll leave a link down in the description to her review if you want to check it out. One thing that Steph said in that review that really resonated with me, because this was how I was feeling while I was reading, was that with this book, Jennifer L. Armentrout basically took everything about Twilight, and I mean everything, the good, bad, the ugly, and said, I'm gonna make you love this. Because yes, the characters are frustrating and some of them are total jerks and they're just brooding in the corner, but somehow Jennifer L. Armentrout makes you absolutely love it. It's such an addicting read, and I found myself unable to put it down. For me though, the best thing about this book was our main character. I absolutely love Katie. I love her voice. She is not a doormat in any way, shape, or form. She is witty, she is sarcastic, she is spunky. I absolutely love her. So I think in the end I gave this 8.5 out of 10 or 4 out of 5 because it was such an addicting read. It was so much fun, but I didn't completely fall in love with it. Okay, now finally getting into the 2017 reads. The first book that I read in 2017 was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. My best friend Sarah, who I've mentioned several times on this channel, listened to the audiobook at the beginning of 2017, and she was like, Kristen, you have to read this, you will love it. And so I did read it, and I did really love it. This book is absolutely everywhere right now because of the Hulu series, but in case you don't know what it's about, the main character, Offred, is a handmaid in what is a dystopian America that's now called the Republic of Gilead. Essentially within this society, there's very little to zero female rights, and a majority of the non-wealthy females are handmaids, which essentially means that they are only there to bear the children of the wealthier men. There's a lot more to the world, but I think it's best to experience yourself, so I don't want to get into it too much. And like I said, I really enjoyed this book. I want to say I gave it 9 out of 10, so still 4 out of 5, but verging on 5 out of 5. I thought that Atwood's writing was really great, and I thought the world was really well fleshed out. We not only get to see Offred's life as a handmaid in Gilead, but we also get to see glimpses into her life before the Republic of Gilead was even established, and it's this really interesting shift that happens a lot more quickly than I thought it would. For me, it was kind of scary to see how quickly everything progressed, and it was super hard-hitting, and it really resonated with me. I will say though, this is a very world-based book, which is something that I really love, but if you're looking for something with a really fast, action-packed plot, this probably isn't the book for you. But overall, I absolutely loved it. Like I said, 9 stars out of 10, 4 out of 5, really awesome dystopian. Next up is Dear Ijewele, or A Feminist Manifesto in 15 Suggestions by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is a non-fiction book written by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie to her friend who asked her how to raise her daughter to be feminist. So it is formatted like a letter to her friend, but it's also broken up into these 15 points on feminism. And overall, I think that this was just a really approachable outlook on feminism. It's something that I think that people who don't consider themselves feminists could relate to. I thought that many of these suggestions were very foundational. I didn't think that it was too groundbreaking or got into any topics that were too controversial, but I did think that they were still very relevant and very important to our world today. That being said, this was written to a woman of the Igbo culture, and it was also written to someone who was raising a child, so obviously some of these suggestions were not incredibly relevant to my life personally, but overall I thought that everything was well written and well put together. I talked about this book in a recent Media of the Moment video, and I read a quote from the book that I really like, so I will leave a link up to that video in the cards. I just think that everything in here is very rational and reasonable, and something that even people who are very averse to the word feminist can really relate to, and just I think it's just so well written, and I think it's really wonderful. In the end, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't pick a rating out of 10, and I didn't give it a full out of 5 because there were things that I personally couldn't relate to within this, but overall I thought it was a really great read, and it's really short, so definitely worth picking up. The next book that I read was The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. You've probably seen this somewhere on YouTube before, but essentially, as it says in the title, this is a book about tidying up. This is a book that has been super popular, especially in the US, and it outlines the KonMari method that Marie Kondo has created for tidying your belongings. After reading this, I actually started tidying my own belongings and going through them and following the KonMari method, and I made a video series about it, so I will leave a link up in the cards to the playlist for that if you want to check that out. Obviously, I'm not going to try to describe the entire process to you given that there's a whole book written about it, but I did describe it a little bit in those videos, and I'll touch on some of the highlights. Essentially, you go category by category rather than location by location within your house or apartment, and you start by discarding and then you organize everything rather than organizing and discarding all in one fell swoop. And rather than deciding what to discard, you decide what to keep by holding every item and trying to determine whether or not it sparks joy. After reading this, I went on Goodreads and was kind of surprised to see a lot of really negative reviews about this book, a lot of them getting into some of the more frou-frou or new age or cutesy elements of this book that can seem kind of ridiculous to some of us. For example, she talks about feeling the energy of items, and she says that when you arrive home, you should greet your home, or when she says that things should spark joy, she has a very physical example of this. Stuff like that. Stuff that, especially for me, a very unemotional person, can be a little bit too cutesy and new agey. And obviously, I understand where they're coming from. I am never going to be someone who greets my home when I get home. It's just not going to happen. I am not going to be feeling the energy of objects anytime soon. But I think that when you get rid of some of those surface level kind of silly seeming things, you get to a process of decluttering your items that's actually super helpful. And like I said, this feeling of sparking joy can be a little elusive or silly, but rather than that, you can come up with questions for yourself, like if it's something that you actually use, or if you're happy to have it, or if it inspires you, something like that. So overall, I think that there are a lot of really good decluttering suggestions in here once you bog through some of the more new agey cutesy aspects to it. At this point in time, I have completely finished my KonMari decluttering of my apartment. Not all the videos are up yet, but I have finished it, and I'm going to be filming a video talking about what I've learned in this process. But overall, I thought that this was a really helpful and kind of inspirational book for me. Once again, like everything else in this like little wrap up, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So far, I clearly haven't been like completely blown away by anything this year, but I thought that this was really helpful for me. It was something that I definitely needed to hear, whether or not it's some sort of mind-blowing, life-changing organizational method. And finally, we've gotten down to the last 2 things which are in the same series, so I'm going to talk about them in one fell swoop, and that is Giant Days Volume 1 and Volume 2, which I don't have here. Giant Days is a comic series that follows 3 female friends who meet at the beginning of university, and it follows them throughout their journey through university. I think this series is, for me, what I kind of wanted Lumberjanes to be, because Lumberjanes was kind of described as this very like girl power feminist comic series, but I thought that it was too episodic. I didn't see very many plot lines that threaded through multiple volumes. But in this one, while it's still rather episodic, there are large overarching plots that carry throughout the series that I think are really awesome. But I think that the best aspect of the series is the characters. Not only the 3 main characters, but also a lot of their friends that are recurring characters within the series. I really like all of them, and I think that each of them is a really distinct and unique character, and I really love the characters in the series. I have to say that Susan and McGraw are probably my favorite characters, but I really like all of them. I think that this first volume is much more episodic than the following volumes are, and what I mean by that is that there are 3 different issues within this, or maybe 4 or 5, I don't know, but there are multiple issues within this, and each of them has their own distinct storyline, kind of like an episode of The Office or something. However, I think once you get down to Volume 2, there are still more episodic things, but there are larger overarching plot threads that you begin to see carry through multiple volumes, and I think that that is what I really love about this series. Overall, I think that this series is really fun, and the characters are really endearing, and I love them so much. I am having so much fun reading the series, and I can't wait to read more volumes of it. Once again, I have given both of these volumes 4 out of 5. I gave this one 8 out of 10, and I gave Volume 2 9 out of 10, so I liked that one quite a bit. So that is it for this wrap up, and you can definitely expect to see another wrap up in the much nearer future, hopefully sometime at the end of May once I've finished my 30-day reading challenge. If you do want to keep up with that 30-day reading challenge, I have been posting updates every day on Twitter, and I have been occasionally updating my Instagram with that. I don't think I ever link my Instagram down in the description, but I will try to remember to do that. As always, I will leave links down in the description to my blog, Twitter, and Goodreads. Please add me as a friend on Goodreads. I would love to be friends with all of you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!